Welcome to the Creative Spaces Podcast. This is Rob Wenner and Kevin Booth, and we're talking to successful people about their careers, how they got started, and their surrounding environments that influence their creative process.
So this is part 2 of episode 26, just recapping the episodes that we've had so far. In each one of those episodes, we asked our guests if they had a backup plan. So the first backup plan, or lack thereof, comes from Rich Redmond, drummer for Jason Aldean.
Well, my parents, they were so supportive. They never said, Rich, how about a trade or, be a doctor or a lawyer, because that is true. You go to college for a long time. You come out, you're a lawyer, you're getting a job. Mm-hmm. You're a doctor, you're going to save lives. You go to college and study music, you get out and you're like right at the bottom. You have some increased skill sets, but you got to go out and shake hands and shake trees and hopefully something comes together. So they were always really supportive, but I did kind of like the Greg Bissonette back plan, which was to go to a great college and study music education, because that would allow me to wear the blazer with the patches on the elbow and stand up in front of the third period band and conduct the concert band and go work with the drum line and teach the jazz ensemble. And I was like, that could be kind of fun. And in addition to getting those skill sets together, it was like those things really helped me just in life, like being able to effectively communicate and teach and break down exercises and work with school kids of varying ages or conduct. Like there's a lot of, just conducting in 4/4 and being able to cue someone. I mean, there's a lot of coordination involved there and stuff. So all that stuff really paid off. But that was my closest thing to a backup plan. I mean, I was a pretty good writer. I was kind of like a journalism student. So I was like, well, maybe I can, write for magazines and books someday. And I did those things. So
you expanded your possibilities within the realm you were interested in, instead of saying, well, my backup plan will be, I'll go be an electrician.
Completely different. Yeah. If you're in a lane, I just tell people, like, look at all the possibilities within that lane. So say you are a performer. Well, you can, you could teach, you could create products, you could put your own recording studio together, you get the room treated with Orlex and you're in business. I mean, Rob, I had, your guys came over almost over 10 years ago to my little crash studio in Nashville and made the room just superb. And it's not a massive slice of my creative pie, but it is amazing to have a place where I can go, someone can send me files and I could bring their song to life. It's so satisfying.
Up next is Tony Succar. Tony's a great, successful Grammy-winning artist, great energy. Interesting to hear his story of whether he had a backup plan or not.
At the age of 13 was the first time I told my dad, I said, Dad, I think I would love to play for the band because I really like what the band sounds like, and I've been practicing. And he didn't even know that I was really practicing on my own, like the drums, because my dad bought every instrument possible, and he just had it in the house. So it was like crazy, we had like congas and timbales and all these percussion instruments, accordion, piano, trumpet, bass, guitar. So you could choose. It was like a Sam Ash, Guitar Center. So that's when the moment really clicked for me that I wanted to do something with music. Now, when I started playing in the band at 13, I was a really bad drummer, but my dad gave me the opportunity anyway. So he kicked out his drummer and he put me, which is, I was like, man, that's really nice of my dad, to give me the opportunity. But I guess that's what dad do, right? So
it was also pushing you, right? Keep up.
Yeah, keep up. And
he wasn't giving you a free pass, right?
Yes. So I started playing in the band and I really loved it. It clicked right away. I had a blast. And, fast forward, when I turned 18 is when I decided to study music at the university. So I didn't know what I was going to be as a professional, right? I thought, like, since I did it from 13 to 18, I was like, 5 years in it, I felt like I kind of knew it all, right? I knew the industry already, but in reality, I only knew gig life, I didn't really know like the recording life or anything like that. So I wanted to actually study computer science and become like rich, make a software, just make money. That was my whole thing. But then I quickly noticed that my SAT scores weren't backing me up. So it was like, it was like, yeah, you want to,
That's
you
happened
want,
to a few of us.
yeah, it's happened to a lot of people.
Music was your fallback.
Yeah, music was my fallback, bro. It was like, okay, either, and my sister, just to give you a sort of a comparison, right? You all compare yourself to your sister and brother. My sister went to Harvard, so she was super smart and had like perfect GPA, and I was like barely scraping through because I was always in band practice and I was playing soccer and I loved everything to do except for academics, right? I used to hate that.
Right.
I used to love every other class, art and all that. So that's when I went to college and I got into university. That's when I decided to study jazz performance, which was a glorified undecided degree, right? It was like, so that was my thing. It was performance. But let me tell you, man, once I stepped through that door and I started the program and I started seeing how competitive it was inside of the university, that's when I really, it all clicked for me. That was the moment that I was like, okay, either I go all the way and become an extreme professional and master perfectionist at my craft, or I'm just going to get hired at a local school and teach band,
Right.
And so that's when it really all clicked for me.
Hey, so Steve Marcantonio, great episode. He's got a bunch of credits. He's done some really, really great stuff. The John Lennon story is quite interesting, as all of his stories. Is John Belushi's story. There's a ton in that episode to dig out. But we also asked him about his backup plan.
I was working General Motors in 1978 after I graduated in 75. We were shut down for a changeover. They had to change the parts over for the new models. And Joey said to me, I was on a phone the other day with a friend of mine, Roy Cicala. And when he said that name, I knew who that was because I used to study the album credits. Right. So I saw Roy Cicala's name and record plant. I was like, wow. So I went to meet Roy and he took to me like that. And that's how I got my start in 1978.
So you started at the bottom. You just got in the door.
I started at the bottom. I was still working at General Motors. I was unemployed. I was making 95% of my pay. And I was looking forward to the Jersey Shore for the whole summer. When I met Roy and as soon as I walked into the record plant, it was like a drug. I was addicted immediately. And I spent most of my days and nights at the record plant the whole time I was unemployed from General Motors. And then when they called me back, I went back. And yes, I started from the bottom. I cleaned the rooms. I made sure all the supplies were there. Those are back in the days when you needed grease pencils, razor blades, leader tape, flanges, reels, track sheets, and take sheets.
You explained why, but did you realize that was a career or would be a career path for you? Or did it just...
Yes, it's funny you should bring that up too, because just the other day, my wife, we were talking about me working at General Motors. Now, if I had stayed there, I probably would have made money. I would have probably had a nice retirement fund.
Sure.
But I would have been stuck in New Jersey. And I remember when I was at General Motors, I kept saying to myself, man, I got to get out of here. And the one thing I thought of was my dad. My dad worked 34 years at Exxon, but he was in D-Day, for goodness sakes. You know what I mean? That was years ago. It was before. So like I said to myself, I don't want to grow up like my dad. And it wasn't a slight to him. It was just like, so when I got the opportunity to go to record plant, I knew that was going to be my life.
Next up again is Greg Wells. Greg was in the first part of the episode. Greg tells us a little bit about whether he had a backup plan or not, between what his mom wanted him to do and what he ultimately decided.
My mom wanted me to be an English teacher and do piano lessons on the side. And I had this thing happen to me when I was 11. I got this disease in my right hip. It's called leg perthase disease. It's not super rare, but it's not very common. Usually kids from infancy to about 3 years old, that's when you get it, if you're going to get it. I got it at 11.
Wow.
And it cuts off the blood flow to the top of your leg bone, which is your hip ball, right? That's the top of your femur. And so my left hip's totally fine, still fine, but my right hip kind of stopped growing and it changed shape and it started to slide out of the hip socket, which was super painful. So I was in a wheelchair off and on for 2 years. And I was in casts from like the top of my legs down to my ankles, both legs.
Wow.
With a stick. There's actually a hockey stick plastered between the two legs for a long time. I had to learn how to walk again, and that really slowed me down. And so I was just in bed like for months, and it was and then the boredom just like ratcheted up to a whole other level of, you know, catastrophic boredom. But we had a little radio, and I had this little one earpiece out of this AM radio, and I just started listening all the time to the local AM radio station, and so as a result, I'm like hyper familiar with songs that were on the radio during those 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Michael McDonald, What a Fool Believes, and like all that, you know. And some of it was just absolutely amazing music. And it got me thinking about, you know, maybe music is like a thing that I could just, I don't know how you do it. Like no one around me is doing music, and it's definitely not being modeled for me, but maybe there's a way. And then when we got that cable box where we got 40 or 50 channels, we started getting a really badass TV station out of Toronto, which is like the New York of Canada. Mm-hmm. And it's still there. It's a TV station called City TV.
Yeah, I remember.
And it's owned and run creatively by this pretty amazing guy named Moses Znaimer. And he would put up the most incredible programming. Like he, you know, if a concert came to town, he would negotiate the live telecast rights, and he'd just set up 3 cameras and put it live on the air from B.B. King to, I remember when Stevie Ray Vaughan played the El Macombo Club in Toronto. It was like unbelievable. And I saw that live. They had a show that was on every Friday night called The New Music, and it was an hour show. Every 15 minutes, every quarter, they would profile anyone professionally making music. So it would be like the first 50 minutes could be, I remember seeing U2 on their first tour of Canada, and they all looked like they were just fresh out of high school. They probably were. They were interviewed. And like really great candid interviews just in a diner. And then the next 15 minutes would be, you know, Laurie Anderson, like a performance artist out of New York. The next 15 minutes would be Pat Metheny. The next 15 minutes would be, I don't know, you know, and it's all over. Whoever was coming through Toronto, they would arrange an interview. And that's when I was really like, oh, there are people doing this for a living. I don't know how they're doing it, but there's proof, you know, there's proof that the feelings that I'm feeling aren't crazy. And maybe there's a way if I can. Yeah. And then there was a show, a Canadian kids show. I don't remember the name of it. And they were interviewing Steve Lukather and David Paich from the band Toto. And at the end of the interview, this woman asked the guy, she said, do you have any advice for young musicians out there that might want to go into music? Of course, I sat up straight. And Steve Lukather gave the best answer. He's like, yeah, it's really simple. You figure out the records that you love. You read the credits. You figure out where those records are being made, who's making those records, and then you move to that city and try to get to know those people. And I can still see him saying that, you know, this would have been like the early 80s, I guess. But that was the best professional advice I think I'd ever heard. And that is what I wound up doing. It took a long time, but he was right.
Next up is Sarah Natochenny. Sarah is the voice of Ash Ketchum, Pokemon. Great episode to listen to. She shares about her backup plan. Let's listen to her story.
I didn't intend on being a voice actor. It was a total accident. I was a competitive rhythmic gymnast for 8 years as a child, and I wanted to do something easier. So my parents enrolled me in acting school, but only after I won a bronze medal at the Junior Olympics.
You have a bronze medal.
I do, yeah. This is still my greatest achievement because it was the hardest thing to get. But it taught me a good lesson. Like, if I can do that, and if I can study pre-calculus and pass that class, like all of these things that I did as a child that were incredibly difficult that I could never imagine doing now, they taught me that I can walk into an audition and nail it. You know, that I can get on a set and never having been there before and not be nervous because it's all easier than what I've already done as a child. So It's a good lesson for parents who are like, should I put my kid in soccer? Should I put my kid in something really difficult? Like, yeah, probably. Yeah. If you can. So yeah, they said I couldn't sit around doing nothing. And I hated gymnastics. Like I was very mean to my mom. I really wanted to quit. It was very painful. So I went to acting school, and after my first class, we did like 3 hours of sense memory. And as a 12-year-old, sitting there and meditating for 3 hours and remembering all the terrible things and feeling and smelling and tasting while you're just sitting there. After 3 hours of that, I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Next up is Kayleigh Moyer. We heard from Kayleigh in the first part of the episode about her studio. And she talks about her backup plan, whether she had one, what she was going to do, and the moment she decided what she would do as a career.
As a kid, you're trying to search for that one thing you're good at. You try karate, you try swimming, you try dance. And it's like, I sat down at the drums. I'm like, this is what I like. This makes sense and it connects. And like immediately 10 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I don't know. It was like I knew all along, but I just kind of had to find that outlet. But it was always rhythm.
So your parents were really supportive. I mean, they took this seriously.
Yes, it was immediately. I think they saw this spark in my eye that I never had before. And I'm so thankful. I mean, it was immediately like, okay, what do we need to do to make this dream of yours happen? And was it, getting a drum set? Was it taking me to play blues jams on a Wednesday night, a school night?
Awesome.
Making, coming to all of these shows. I mean, they are killer parents, amazing, amazing parents. And when I told them I want to move to Nashville and play drums, and it was like, great, well, we need to get you a space in Nashville where you have room for your kit. We need to get you a truck that you can fit your drums in.
Really?
They're absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think I know the answer to this question then. So did you ever have a backup plan? Was it ever like, well, if the drum thing doesn't work out, I'll do this? Or
Well, the short answer to that is no, because I think my parents, when I talked to them about this, because I like to think that I'm a relatively responsible individual, and I want my parents to be proud of me, and that would mean like in high school, I really wanted to give them a backup plan that, we could be proud of.
Right.
But that backup plan seemed to be everybody telling me I needed to go to school for music education and, have a band director's degree to fall back on. And not that I don't respect that career and I don't love teaching. I just never saw teaching in that way as something that I ever really felt like I was suited well to do or wanted to do. And I remember my mom telling me that if I had a backup plan, then I was probably going to have to fall back on it. But if I chase what I'm passionate about with all my heart, then I'm going to find a way to make that work.
Certainly all your experience in the former would only lend to being an instructor as well, right?
Yeah, and I always saw that as part of, what I could do. I mean, within the world of drumming, I definitely am doing things that maybe you could consider as a backup plan. Like I love teaching still, but I like doing that on specific topics, which is why I do, individual stuff online, but I also love doing clinics with drummers on very specific, parts of drumming. So I'm still teaching and sharing that, but it's not with an all, group of all different kinds of musicians. It's pretty specific. But just to be able to make your complete living off of being a musician, I mean, I'm having to do a lot of different things, which is why like learning how to record drums and learning how to record myself is such a big passion project of mine. And I mean, I guess that's kind of a fallback, but it's also enhancing what I'm doing. I think that you have to have your hands in a lot of different pies at the same time. And depending on what happens in the world, we learned how important this is last year to just always have something that, if touring falls out of the picture, which is what I love doing probably the most, I always have to have these other things that also can support me, make me happy, inspire me, and keep me playing music.
Tony Gray is interesting to me because it's like he was predestined to do what he does today, but he fought against that a little bit. He did not rebel against the 9-to-5 job to be a musician. He rebelled against being a musician and tried to have some other type of career.
I was a Royal Engineer, and I went through all the training. And then as soon as I finished the training, I was in a car accident, broke my back, medically discharged as I was in hospital. And then it was from there, when I was at home recovering, my stepdad brought me home because he's a guitarist. Like he plays blues and slide and bluegrass and all that stuff. And one time he just brought home a bass, like a secondhand bass he picked up from the store. And he said, instead of sitting around being miserable all day, why don't you learn how to play music? And I really rejected it for some reason. I guess it was one of those in pain at home kind of, don't tell me how to live. But he just left it there. And then I remember when I was a kid watching one of my classmates, and he was like in the level 42 and he was into all the slap and bass. And I remembered, I'm like, wow. And I remembered my friend's dad was also a bass player. So I was just kind of, okay, I could maybe give this a go. So I just got into it, and it was kind of really healing for me. Like I ended up practicing like 12 hours a day. I just became so obsessed with shutting off from the world. And then as soon as I kind of showed an interest, like a few months into it, my dad was like, well, why don't you send your uncle a recording of you playing? I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So I sent him a tape, and then he called me up on the phone and was like, hey, you want to do music? Okay, come and see me. So I went to see him in Scotland with Dennis Chambers and Joey DeFrancisco, and I had no idea. Never really listened to the music before or consciously listened to it. I know I've listened to it my whole life, but he was like, okay, let's go. You want to go to America? Let's do it. So
Really?
then like 6 months later, I'd never even heard of Berkeley. And then like literally, I would say 6 to 8 months later, I was on an airplane flying to Berkeley.
Wow.
I've been playing for less than a year. Yeah, it was really bizarre.
So you resisted all that time, but it was in you, right? Because you picked it up really fast, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was just the obsession or the tenacious mindset of wanting something solid in my life. Because I kind of gone from like flaky, and I was quite a good DJ. I was really into it. I was good at matching the beats real quick and picking out tunes that would work simultaneously. So I think it was definitely in me. And then, but I don't know if it was the tenacity of trying to prove myself, because I was such an unconfident kid growing up. The army was like a conscious thing. I need to love myself. I need to have pride in myself. That was what gave it to me. So I would walk around feeling strong, feeling good about myself, not hiding and being shy. And then all of that got taken away, that I think whatever I got into next was going to get my full attention, and I was not going to let go until I got somewhere with it.
The takeaway for me, Rob, in all this is that they had some different ideas of where they were going to go. But when they ultimately encountered music production, and these things, there really wasn't another plan.
Right. They were very focused, and really nothing was going to stop them, and did whatever they had to do, if it involved working, starting from the ground floor, playing the horrible gig once in a while and moving up and through that and going through that and meeting more people, networking, and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Everybody had that same underlying theme that they just kept going. Once they figured out that this is what they wanted to do, they continued on with it.
And the full support from their family at home.
Right.
So listen up, parents. We also asked people about their hobbies, not related to music, and just find out what they were. It's interesting, the responses we got. Some not prepared with a response, still had one.
Right.
Yeah.
And some we were not prepared for either.
Yeah.
That was
right. And they all signify action because they end in ing.
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 The ing.
Ings. All the ings.
Except for one, but we won't. There's one that doesn't end in an ing unless we create a new word for it, but that's okay. We don't need to do that.
Okay.
They'll figure out.
They'll figure it out. All right.
Here we go.
We always ask this question, and it's interesting to see what we get, but is there something else interesting or unexpected about you that people wouldn't know? Or there's hobbies, interests, activities outside of the audio world?
I like to cook. I like to make Thai food. I like to experiment with ethnic foods, find a recipe that I really enjoy going to a restaurant to have, and then figure out how to create it. I have a love of hot sauce, but hot sauce with flavor, not just burn your face off. Like I grow jalapenos, I grow Thai chilies, habaneros, ghost peppers. I like to grow chilies in the summertime. I have a 67 Chevelle. I mean, it's not really a hobby because I didn't restore it, but I enjoy, hot rods. And
I like to eat cake for breakfast.
Cake for breakfast. Did you drink coffee with that?
What are you laughing at, Rob? I love cake. What's wrong with that?
What kind? Like any kind of cake?
Cake, man. I could eat a scone you give me a yellow cake with fudge icing with a cup of coffee. I'm a happy guy.
My wife makes an amazing cheesecake, so I'll have to have her make one of those and drop it by.
You know my address.
I do.
I'm kind of joking about that, but I'm not. I am a sweets fanatic. I've never done a drug in my life, but I like my red wine and my sweets.
Yeah.
I had to slow down because there was years ago where you wouldn't catch me without you reach in my pocket and there would be, a handful of Skittles or a handful of, hardtack candy or Jolly Ranchers. constantly. Like it's a nerve thing. Like I had to have it. I'm surprised I haven't any teeth left because it was really bad for a while. So I calmed down. Now my kids, I have a 5 and a 9-year-old, they love candy. So I'm like, Daddy, what happened to the rest of the Smarties? I'm like, I don't know. You guys must have ate them all. I'm kind of a boring person. I live for my family. I live for my music, my I'm now in the process of learning Pro Tools better and Final Cut Pro on my laptop. So that's consumed me a lot of this quarantine we've had. Is just I try to educate myself and learn new things other than trying to get better at drums, which God knows I definitely need to do that. But there's always stuff to learn. You always got to educate. My mother always said, no education's a waste, no matter what you learn. So I'm still, Pro Tools is still, I'm at the point where I can record myself but there's so much to know and I love it. I'm very intrigued by frequencies and EQs and why'd you use this compressor and I love all that, so.
I really like baking. I mostly like eating baked goods, but making them is really good too.
Yeah.
I think everything's pretty much on course, on par. I'm a huge gamer. I love anime because I work in anime. I always really enjoy consuming media. I like learning languages. That's kind of a side fun thing. I've been working on Japanese and Chinese for a while now.
What other interests? I mean, I'm an avid football fan. I love the Titans. I miss the fact that, I'm not able to go to the games this year. It's disappointing to me. I understand, of course, like we just said, I understand why, but yeah, I really enjoy doing that. I do have, I have I come from a sports family and the music thing for me has been just amazing and has been, you can tell, again, by my passion, but yeah, that's where I kind of go on my little vacation.
Yeah.
For 10 days out of the year, unless they get into the playoffs, 10 days out of the year, I'm at Nissan Stadium and kind of shouting and cheering,
Awesome.
I cook, man. A lot of people, I don't think a lot of people know that about me, but I'm really serious about my cooking, man. I would love to maybe have a truck or something, maybe down the line when I'm older or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah, food truck.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm working on recipes, man. I'm really trying to build a really strong recipe
catalog
or whatever.
Yeah.
Rolodex. Maybe duck tacos or something, I don't know. We'll see.
Awesome.
But yeah, that man, yoga. I do yoga too. I try to keep limber just because being on stage, man, it's good to be limber up, before. Meditation, man. I want to promote meditation, man, to the musicians out there and the producers and artists, man. Get your head clear, nice and calm, and because I know how stressful things can be, man. And things are different now because of COVID, but when we're out there in the road and we're traveling, it's it takes a lot out of us, man. And some of us are dealing with addictions, not drinking problems, or whatever. But get your head right. So meditation, man. I'm now promoter of meditation, man. Please,
awesome.
Get your head right. So
awesome.
Big barbecue guy as well. I love barbecue. I'm pretty heavily into barbecue. And so
what kind of grill do you have? A pellet grill?
I have a lot of pellet grills. Yep. I have.
Oh, really?
I have 6 Traegers.
Really? So you got a pellet smoker probably.
They're all smokers. Yeah. They're all smokers, but with the new Pro series, with Traeger, all their 2019 models and 2020 models, they all go to 500 degrees. So they double as both. So we've gotten ridiculously into that. And next month, Traeger is flying me to Florida for that fishing trip. I'm telling you guys about that. They're shipping 2 grills down there, and they're flying me down there to go out on this giant half yacht essentially. Fish for swordfish, catch one. We're going to have a Traeger on the boat. We're going to prepare it, cook it on the boat, and eat it all out at sea and do a video of the whole thing.
Cool.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it'll be very cool, man. I'm excited about it.
Just my passion for roller skating. I love roller skating. I roller skate every chance I get. I'll go out to the park. I'll go to the rink, and it's roller boogie. It's not just, the boring, skate.
I like boxing as well, actually. I think I'm into the discipline more than the violence. I'm not into violence, but I'm into discipline, movement, how you move affects, it's all the mind really. And these boxers can get themselves down to a pound, half a pound over a 12-week training course. They can get right on the pound on the day. Amazing dedication and discipline. So I'm really into that actually.
I'll give you something that's really juicy for that one, okay? Here's the thing that not many people know, and when they see me, they think, oh, she's elegant. She's fun though. It's not a vocal thing. I think it's a different kind of control. I am really, really good at burping. I've won a lot of burping competitions.
Cool. But cooking, I love cooking. Being Italian, of course, every Italian's mother was a good cook, and my mother was the best. And I actually filmed some of her recipes. And me and my brothers both still cook. And I could just remember, like, she made this one pasta called cavatelli. You take a strand of dough, like a snake that long, and you put it through this machine, and it spits out these little canoe-like pieces of dough. I remember my mother, she had this crank thing. It's like an antique. So I remember when I was like, a later teenager, 18, 19, 20, I'd come home late Saturday night, and I'd wake up Sunday morning, and I heard, it's like, oh, we're having gavadil, And my mother gave that to me when she died, which is my possession. And like I said, it comes from my mother. So when I was at the record plant, for instance, I worked with the Jay Giles band, and I brought in a tray of baked ziti. I have a picture of Peter Wolf with a tray of ziti and a spoon like that. And so there was that. And then another time, working on this Blues Brothers project, my mother made the best veal parm. So she made veal parm for us. And it was me, like I said, me, the producer and the engineer. So, we were eating, and John stopped in, Belushi, about 6, 7 o'clock. And he was coherent that day. We had good John Belushi. Wow. What you guys doing? We're eating some veal coat. You want some? So he left, right? 1 o'clock in the morning, I see the phone ring, and the reps is gone. I pick it up. Record plant. Yeah, it's John. What are you doing? I says, we're still working. He goes, got any veal left? I said, yeah. And he ate the veal and he left.
Really?
And he was the only other two Johns I ever asked an autograph for. John Belushi. I says, John, can you please give me an autograph from my butcher, Johnny Sacco?
Really?
I got an autograph for Johnny Sacco for his veal.
All right, so that was it. And if you didn't figure out what the word was, that's caking. Caking for breakfast.
Yeah. With Ray Luzier.
Yeah. Thanks again for listening to Creative Spaces. And before we go, please make sure you follow Creative Spaces on YouTube or Twitter. Like, subscribe, leave us a comment, then head over to Orlex.com where you'll find a ton of information about making the right choices when it comes to acoustic treatment and sound isolation for your creative space. You can also purchase Orlex products on our site or visit your favorite Orlex dealer. Thanks for joining us.